Greetings and welcome back to room 303, Senior English B, and we turn now in our My Perspectives volume to page 762, James Barrie's From Lucy, Englan Lady. Let's turn back to 759 and be introduced to Barrie as well as to the background for this poem. First of all, James Barrie, he was born in 1924. He did die in 2017. You'll want to put that in your volume. He spent his childhood in a coastal village in Jamaica, where he started writing stories and poems while still in school. He moves to London after World War II and continues to write while working there. Barrie published his first collection of poems, Fractured Circles, in 1979. 2 years later, he became the first West Indian to win the Poetry Society's National Poetry Competition Prize. Barrie's other awards and honors include the Signal Poetry Award in 1989 for When I Dance and the Order of the British Empire in 1990. Now let's get some background information from Lucy, Englan Lady. From Lucy, Englan Lady is a part of a group of poems that James Barrie wrote in the Caribbean Creole language and in the voice of Lucy, a Jamaican immigrant woman living in London, England. According to the poet, most people who came to Britain in the 1950s had a natural respect for the royal family, which wields ceremonial authority and often represents Britain to the rest of the world. Let's now turn to the poem on 762. Now, we are going to be working to some degree in dialect, no question. You're going to get a sense of that right away. We're talking, of course, about Queen Elizabeth II, who became heir to the throne in 1952 at the age of 25. And we will ask what it is that this Lucy voice has to say about Queen Elizabeth II as symbol, especially for England. Okay, so let's enjoy the reading, paying attention to some of the ideas presented.
From Lucy, Englan Lady, by James Barrie.
You asked me about the lady. The dear old centre here still shine with Queen. She affect the place like the sun. Not coming out often, and when it happened, everybody's out smiling as she waving a hand like a seagull, flying slow, slow. And you know, she come from dust-free rooms and velvet and diamond. She make you feel this all in on town, London, where long time people than mine. And hands after hands die away, making streets, putting up bricks, a piece of brass, a piece of wood, and planting trees. And they give a car a half-day job getting through. And Lila, darling, no, I never meet the Queen in flesh, yet sometimes, deep, I'm sorry for her. Everybody expects a show from her, like she a space tourist on Earth. And darling, unless you can go home and scratch up your husband, it must be a hard strain keeping good graces for all hypocrite faces. Anyhow, my dear, you know what old time people say. Birds sing sweet for its nest.
From Luke.
All right, let's turn now to this study, and let's start at 3A and comparing this to other titles. We think about immediately, don't we, Robert Burns's To a Mouse and to a Louse. Hearing a professional reader read in the Creole dialect will help us to appreciate what's going on in this poem, in the same way that reading To a Mouse and to a Louse as well will have a powerful influence if we hear a good Scottish reader of that text. Notice we will begin by looking at the poem with the word you. It's as if Lucy is speaking to another person about England and about Queen Elizabeth II, and just how amazed that the speaker is at who this woman is and what she represents. Notice we begin with an interesting simile. She affects the place like the sun, not coming out often. She'll only make appearances every so often. And then again, another simile, like a seagull flying, slow. Now, note the genius of using the word slow twice in a row to kind of calm down the rhythm of the language. And then a break. And then to tell where she came from and what she's done in terms of changing and making the island of Britain such a powerful place, right? She points out, for example, many generations have happened, and she is the recipient of a tremendous culture, the point being here. But then the third stanza. And Leela darling, no, I never meet the queen in flesh. Yet sometimes, line 20, deep, note the repetition of the word deep, I sorry for her. Now this is interesting. Someone who clearly doesn't have the power of Queen Elizabeth II looks at the queen and says, I can't help but feel kind of sorry for her. Everybody expect a show from her. Like, another simile, she has spaced us on earth, like an outsider. And darling, unless you can go home and scratch up, lose your temper at, your husband, it must be hard, strain, keeping good graces for all hypocrite faces. Put in your notes really quickly, what do you think it is that he's saying about the challenge of being Queen Elizabeth II, or any politician for that matter, or a person of position of power? There has to be that second life, the life behind the mask, the real life. And that one's got to be tough. That one has to be a real challenge. It can't always be smiles and waving of hands, in other words. Anyhow, it's almost as if a bit of a reverie. My dear, you know what old-time people say, and then we get this quote. Notice your Jamaican proverb, your footnote here, referring to the nightingale's habit of singing loudest near its nest. It means those closest to home are the most contented. In other words, we're contented, the speaker here, we're contented with what we think we know, but we're aware of the things we don't know, obviously, about, for example, Queen Elizabeth II. There is, some of you are familiar maybe with any number of critiques of Queen Elizabeth. One, of course, The Crown, a show that has tried to talk a little about and show a little about what's behind the scenes, the challenges that are involved. Let's jump to 3B for just a second. What do you think it is like to be a person of tremendous power who comes out into public, makes some kind of a show, but there's got to be another life that we just don't see, that we don't understand standing behind that? What do you think that's like? Would you like to be a person like this, or are you more comfortable being and living in the kind of quiet life that you now have? Well, James Barrie's from Lucy, Englan Lady. Hope this leads you to more of Barrie's really amazing work. Thank you.